Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Administration Committee meeting to order. Could we have roll call, please?
Alderman Benner. Alderman Nichols.
Here.
Alderman Taylor. Alderman Kraut-Kramer. Alderman Langdon.
Here.
Alderman Keehan. Alderman Zielinski has been excused.
Thank you. The first item of business this evening is minutes to approve from the Administration Committee meeting of 6/1/15. Do we have a motion? Alderman Keehan?
Thank you. I'll make a motion to approve the Administration Committee minutes from the June 1st, 2015 meeting.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are approved. We have two items under communications this evening. We have a memo from Ken Horner, the Director of Operations at CIVMIC, regarding property insurance update. And we also have, well, I'll start with that one first. Are there any questions or discussion for Attorney Captain on that communication? Seeing none, we'll move on to communication number 2 from Concert Health Resources Ltd., the City of Menasha 2015 Group Report. Any questions or discussions on that one?
I'll ask.
Alderman Langdon.
Thank you, Chairperson Nichols. Attorney Captain, I was going over this group report, and from what I see, I gotta say I'm very proud of the numbers. I don't know how many people work here, but I'm very proud of what I see and the participation. Your thoughts on that? Do you think we did pretty good as far as participation?
Attorney Captain.
Thank you.
The participation for 2015 was actually down about, I want to say 30 participants from 2014 and 2013. So that is something that the Wellness Committee is trying to figure out. You know, is there, they have agreed to send out a survey to employees to see why it is that there wasn't as much participation as the previous couple of years. So the numbers that you see here, when we met with the healthcare professional, he did indicate, you know, it's probably that you had people who really take a substantial interest in their health who were the participants perhaps, and you know, we did miss quite a few employees. And would it be beneficial, does the group believe that we should continue this program? Maybe it's something we shouldn't offer because we did have to pay for it, and if there wasn't a lot of interest by employees, perhaps they, you know, perhaps the money should be spent better in some other area.
My mistake then.
But the grades were very good for those people who did participate, yes.
Did we get this report the last couple of years? I can't remember. We did, okay. Let me ask, did we talk about this in the past then, about insurance and about how much it costs for insurance, and if the people participate in this wellness program, that our insurance could possibly get lowered? So now you're at the point, well, do we still, because of the numbers, do we still do? Okay. Well, I'm very excited about the numbers that I read, so I wanted to say that. You're welcome.
Alderman Benner.
Thank you, Chairman. Pam, what kind of steerage do we use to encourage people to participate in the health risk assessment?
Attorney Captain.
The, thus far, people received the, well, if it was during work hours, they received the time off in order to participate. There was also a cash reward, I guess, for participating, which was something that an employee just drew an envelope and then received an amount of cash. It was only available to employees to participate, and that was something that was used in the last couple of times. I believe this is the third time that has been used. So it was odd. We did change providers. This was a different provider this year. We did get more compliments, I guess, with regard to the process and procedure. So that is something that the Wellness Committee, actually, they have talked in the past about how is it that we improve participation. One of the discussions, and I think it was really the only thing that they ever actually took a vote on, they had recommended that perhaps if you did not participate, well, I shouldn't say that. It was, I have to be careful how I word this, you know. If a person did participate, the person would not have to pay as much of a premium towards their health insurance.
That's where I was going
And
as far as the direction of steerage.
And the persons who have been on the committee have indicated that they would like to see something like that, as opposed to a reward, some kind of, a little bit different type of incentive, I guess, to participate. And of course, it still would be up to the employee as to whether or not the employee chose to participate. And I'm trying to think, as I recall, from the 1 year, the first year to the second year, the numbers were the same, but there was an inversion of the numbers with regard to the spouses versus employee participation. So the first year, as I recall, we had more employees participate than we had spouses, but we still had around 80 something. And then the next year, it was around 80, but the numbers of spouses participating was higher than the employees. And then for this year, it went down quite substantially with regard to participation.
Yeah.
So that's why they had indicated they drafted a number of questions and then had would like those questions to go out to employees inquiring about, what was the reason that you chose not to participate?
Yeah, I think we should have some kind of incentive to get folks to do it rather than offering them a one-time gift thing. I think some discounts on their insurance or something is probably a good idea. The other question that I had is, what has the Wellness Committee done with the data that they received of this? Has it generated any specific programs to help change those numbers, of the negative numbers in here?
Attorney Captain.
The information that comes from the report does generate the topics that the committee looks at with regard to having speakers come in or various programs. That is what helps direct them, so that they know, if you have employees that aren't interested in making changes, well, you would not want to direct your programming to those areas. You would want to look at areas that employees have indicated that they desire changes in making changes. So exercise is one of them, and there have been a few walking programs. In fact, I'm wearing my step counter right now. We finished a walking program that was offered through our insurance company, actually. So there was the cost or rewards that were associated with that program came from our insurance company. So that was one that the committee decided to promote. And then when that one ended, there was a several-week break, and then they decided to continue with an activity-based program and this one is 8 weeks, I believe. Trying to remember how many weeks it is. And it kind of expands the level of activity if people chose to participate, so.
Okay, well, I'm glad to see we're doing something with the data anyways, but we certainly need to encourage more participation. Thank you.
Seeing no other discussion, we'll move on to action items this evening. I'm going to move down to item number 2 first this evening, and that is the WEDIC Site Assessment Grant and Warehousing of Wisconsin Logistics Development Agreements. Director Kyle, could you summarize
Sure.
for us, please?
Yes, I included a memo in your packet together with the agreement, grant agreement with WEDC and a development agreement with Warehousing Wisconsin. This site assessment grant was applied for by the city. It's necessary that the city apply for the grant, and then the funds that have been awarded will be used by Warehousing Wisconsin for several items that include site investigation, some asbestos abatement, building demolition, and I think there's also some soil vapor testing that's associated with that. The city is, in this grant scenario, more or less a pass-through agent whereby the funds are received by the city and then the owner makes certain expenditures and at a future date then we would make reimbursement requests, and then those funds would ultimately be dispersed to the site owner. We do have Howard Kemmerer here tonight. Howard is the president of WOW Logistics, and I think it would be useful for him to sort of explain the bigger picture of what they're trying to accomplish by acquiring the Realty Opus the property, which is next door to their main warehousing operation on Valley Road, and what their thoughts are for the future. So Howard, if you mind.
Are there any objections from hearing from Mr. Kemmer?
Thank you for having me. I think it would probably be useful for me to explain why it is that we were interested in purchasing the property in the first place, and what our plans are and what we know about our plans now. We have a contract operation out of that building on 923 Valley Road, which is contracted to Nina Paper. It has approximately, give or take, 105 employees that are working in 3 different shifts, and then a series of management personnel that run that operation. In the last contract that we had with Nina Paper, which was approximately 17 months ago, they requested the ability to expand the square footage of the building by approximately 60,000 square feet, and also wanted expansion for parking for semi-trucks. And we were not able to accommodate that. We were working when they were making the request during the contract period to see what land would be available. We looked at, going north and going east, as well as looking at the property to the west, which is in question now. During that contract negotiation, they put into the contract our ability to be able to provide additional parking, which was identified by increased parking spaces, as well as square footage of the building itself. So they didn't tell us where to put it or how to construct the parking or the expansion, but they have the ability to cancel that contract if we cannot provide the parking and the additional square footage. Since then, they have looked at expanding the parking lot a couple of different times. They've asked where I was at on it, and then they didn't follow up on it any further. So it's really more of a defensive measure to hold those jobs and an opportunity, in my opinion, as a neighbor in Menasha, to get rid of a couple of blighted properties, buildings that are on that property. Today I happened to be going by there, and I saw a kid with a skateboard without a shirt walking off of that property, going between those two buildings. And I rolled down my window and I said, you know, you don't belong on the property. I know the owners of the property. You have no business on the property. Is there anybody else back there? He said, no. I said, if you don't leave the property, I'm going to call the police. And he walked across the street and went north. I don't know what other kind of issues you've got there, but those buildings are relatively open, and I don't think they're very safe. I don't think the landowner can rent them out in their current condition. I can't imagine anybody renting them. I don't know what you could do with that land if you didn't tear down the buildings. So I would love to be able to tell you that I've got a site plan and I've got an interested customer that is interested in doing some kind of expansion on a particular date, but I don't. But we can get those buildings removed. We can take care of the soil contamination that is happened with solvents, and we're willing to pay for that remediation work, which I think I've already spent $70,000 through engineering and things with the Department of Natural Resources. So we've invested quite a lot. And what I would love to be able to do is get your support on using that site assessment grant to take down the buildings and to prep it so that when Neenah paper is ready, we can expand. Nobody wants to expand that space more than I do. Trust me. Today, there was an announcement this morning, and I have not gotten an opportunity to talk to the president of Neenah paper, but they just purchased a company called Fibermark. It was a large acquisition. It was a couple $100 million. So I don't know if tomorrow is going to be that phone call where they ask to expand, but I don't want to put the jobs at risk, and I certainly don't want to leave a 450,000 square foot building empty because it's not easy to fill those spaces. So.
Thank you, Mr. Kemmer. We'll look for a motion first to open discussion for this item to forward, and Director Kyle would be forwarded to the council after tonight. Okay. Alderman Benner.
Thank you, Chairman. This time I'd like to make a motion to forward to Common Council the WEDC site assessment grant and warehousing and Wisconsin logistics development agreements.
We have a motion and a second. Are there questions for either Director Kyle or Mr. Kemmer? Alderman Langdon.
Thank you, Chairperson Nichols. Might be a dumb question, but I was reading through all this, and maybe I just don't know, and that's what I'm here to learn. Grants, if anybody can help me with grants. I thought when we get a grant that we don't need to pay that back. And then here, from WEDC says you got to pay back whether it's a grant or a loan. So I'm confused.
This grant would not.
And it's in the remedies of event of default, number 8 on page 5 of 13.
Yeah, well, the default would be non-performance under the grant. And that's, in this kind of scenario, that's very unlikely because they would be incurring the expenditures, paying for that, and then they would be reimbursed upon evidence of, from the contractor, and then we make our payment request to WEDC. They would reimburse us, and we would disperse that to Warehousing Wisconsin. So I don't know, I suspect there would be maybe 2 or 3 draws depending upon the timing, and then it would be executed in that way. And they have some obligations on the part of Warehousing Wisconsin. First off, they have to buy the adjoining property, which then is at the cost of $175,000, and that's then the match for this $150,000 SAG grant. So
Okay.
the default is basically if they don't perform.
Okay. I hear everything, and I'm all for this. I read in the paper the other day, WEDC is not doing well, and they even admitted that they're not even following their own policies. That's scary, that they come out and admit that, and that's ridiculous. And then they come up and say things to you guys like, I just want to share that. So, thank you for all you're doing.
There's a tremendous amount of work to do on this property.
Alderman Benner.
Thank you, Chairman. I just did want to comment that there is a note in the memo that our attorney hasn't reviewed this yet, and certainly before, when it came to the Common Council, that we'd be looking for that review at that point to make sure that our attorney's on board with everything that's in here also.
Yes, and just to clarify, Attorney Captain did partake in the initial review. We made some changes which we sent back to Wallace Attorney. Those changes were partially made, and the document that's in your packet is that version. Attorney Captain has not seen or had an opportunity to review what's come back.
I think that the biggest challenge that was requested in the development agreement was there was a specific time frame that you guys were looking for me to make the investment on actually finishing the parking lot. So before I'm ready to do the parking lot, I'll have invested about $400,000 into remediating it and purchasing the property. And it'll take an additional approximately $878,000 to turn the rest of it into and actually pave it, put the stone down, pave it, move a few ponds, and deal with some water retention problems. And the challenge with the time frame is I just don't know when that customer is going to ask us to do the expansion. And I can't go to the board and ask them to support me with a $1.5 million parking lot that no one wants to use at this particular moment in time. And I'm caught in between a rock and a hard place by having something available for expansion and then finishing a parking lot that no one's got trucks on. So what I would like to do is just leave that open-ended. It does not violate the grant, because the grant is open-ended. The grant doesn't call for any specific date. So it would give me the flexibility to clean the property, prep the property, get rid of the blight, and then have that property available for expansion when the customer is ready.
Alderman Benner.
I promise this will be my last time. Have we looked at this from the landscaping perspective too, and as the numbers that you're talking about reflect our green space requirements?
I don't believe they've gone to that level of site development or site plan development. I think they basically have looked at a footprint for the parking area. I think they investigated the soil conditions there to see what kind of fill would need to be placed and that sort of thing, but I don't think they've done it.
As far as the quote on turning it into a parking lot?
Well, that just always seems to be a problem for us at the Plan Commission, or when it comes here, that people haven't looked at our landscaping requirements and
Yeah.
have made it part of their plan, and then all of a sudden the costs become prohibitive to them.
Yeah.
And then it becomes our problem to try to get them to comply with our ordinance.
Yeah, the green space was considered in our initial site plan, because the same construction company that did the layout for this possible expansion was the same construction company that did the work on the original warehouse. So they're aware, and I believe that they were in communications with people in the city to understand how to space out the green space in the parking lot itself, so it wasn't just all paved.
Okay.
And I know that they took that into consideration when they did the site plan and gave me the initial quote.
Excellent, it's good to hear. Thank you.
Any other questions? I would just like to add that we also have to weigh those landscaping concerns and everything with the fact that right now we have a buyer for a blighted property with environmental work that has to be done on that. And from my perspective, I'm glad to see a neighbor willing to take that on. Attorney Captain, are you feeling that we have this open-ended question here about whether or not you need to review the final version before we go to council next meeting? Attorney Captain?
I will take a look at it and then get back to Director Kyle, and we can be in touch with WOW.
Okay. So at this time, we do have a motion and a second to forward this on to the council. Seeing no other questions or discussion at this time, we'll take a roll call vote.
Motion carried on roll call 6-0.
Thank you for being here this evening.
Appreciate it.
We're going to move on to item number 3, which is development agreement terms for the Woodland Developments LLC. Director Kyle, could you provide a summary?
Sure. This property, I'm sure you have all driven by it many times. It's a parcel just south of the large pond on 114. And it's been owned by Woodland Developments and Mike Higgins for quite some time now. There's been some challenges associated with developing the property. Up until, I think it was 2012, when the shoreland setbacks were relaxed for incorporated communities by the DNR, it enabled us to go from a 75-foot shore yard setback for the principal structure on the pond to 50 feet. But there's other, sort of challenges associated with this site. The developer has made some improvements. He's incurred some additional expense for environmental conditions there and is desirous to move forward. And in order to help facilitate that, he's requested the use of the city's deferred assessment policies, and this use is expanded somewhat from our typical in as much as he's requesting that we include the cost for the electrical service and some engineering costs, as well as the other more typical expenses for the paving. The sewer and water were previously installed, so that's not included in this proposal. So we're looking at around, I think it was 98,000 to be funded for those improvements. In reviewing where the source of that money would come from, it was determined that we have sufficient funds in our street construction 2015 budget to pay for the pieces other than the paving. And the paving would be done in a future year. I think we'd want to wait probably a year or so after the majority of construction is completed before the final paving is installed to protect the street. The other element that's involved in this is the land acquisition for a future trail. We've had several iterations of a regional trail network that have taken various courses through or adjacent to this property, and this proposed route would require the acquisition of some property, primarily on the west side of the development site, but also a little bit on the south. And in order to do that, the developer has requested $110,000 for the purchase price for that land. We do have the developer, Mike Higgins, here. If there are questions that you would like to direct to him, that would be in order if so agreed to.
Would you like to say anything tonight, Mr. Higgins?
Yes, please.
Oh, great.
Bear with me, I'm moving a little slow. My name is Michael Higgins. We purchased that property, oh God, 10, 12 years ago. And I wouldn't go into why we purchased it because I was asked not to. I don't think there's only one person on the board that recognizes me here from 12 years ago. So with that being said, initially we annexed that into the city, and at that time I was promised that all the roads, electrical would all be taken care of in the special assessment. And the city has not always followed through. The last road I put in, Woodland Heights, I didn't get a dime from the city. I funded it all myself, but I had an agreement with the city. I didn't come down to the city and scream and holler. I paid for it, okay? Then the city, knowing the problems they had with engineering and so forth, and I had the same problem, same in engineer, we ended up tiffing to a man out of Green Bay, and that TIF forced me to sell another subdivision because the bank says I cannot compete. Okay, so your tiffing went against my development, but I will commend the city of Menasha on the tiffing program. They were the first in the valley to realize they have to help out a developer. Since then, Little Chute has just tiffed the 40 acres of Lexington Homes, the full 40. There's another one up in the town of Hulbert. Some of these cities are starting to watch what the city of Menasha is doing, and they're following through. Right now, if I had to go to the bank and get any money from the bank, I wouldn't get a dime. The project is the fault. We originally bought a home on there. The land was high all the way up the hill originally. I paid $170,000 for the house. Then we purchased the Badger Highway, and I think that was another $130,000 that we purchased. And then we got all the permits to develop. And while this process was going on, Woodland Hills was also being developed, and we left areas of land for the city to purchase for future walking trails. And if you look back in the minutes, it didn't say I had to do that, but I left it there. I could have added it onto other lots. And that's why I'm asking the city to purchase that piece. The sad thing about it is the DNR came in because the same engineer missed a permit, had us re-drill, and he had black dirt from Badger Highways, and they call it wetland. But it was a black dirt pile that they had pushed up and covered over. So then they made me dig all of that land out, put $80,000 worth of trees in that have drowned it, which I told them they were going to drown. And now I can't get the value that I need because Greg Kyle is using it as a wetland as far as his appraisals go from previous wetlands. But originally it was not wetlands. But he's right. You can go swimming in it. So with that being said, that's why I was looking for that amount up on top and not the 240 that I had in it. And I was looking for the city to honor the agreements in the annexation. In fact, I have another street that will be coming up here very shortly. And Greg and I have been talking about it for about a year, and I'm putting requirements for large homes like we have in the Woodland Hills right now. We're going to carry the same theme through, and I already have 4 lots signed up on that piece. And we also then we're going to jump the creek and then go to smaller homes. And from there, maybe we can keep on going. But I also worked hard with another builder. I believe I have all those lots sold with conditions that he puts all the homes up, and he would do that right away. The only thing that we have to do is go take soils test, and there's no problem there. So with that being said, you are funding money for the infrastructure, but if you can get them all up before January 1st, you're going to get your money back January 2nd because it goes on the tax roll. And if it takes longer, for example, there's a total of 11 lots. Even if it takes 3 years for the 110 that I was looking for, within that period of time, you're going to have all your money back. It's not a piece of property that's going to sit, because I sold the lots, and I'll make it public. I lowered the price to $35,000 to move them. Get it on the tax roll, get that thing going. I'm putting up, I had $80,000 worth of lumber there. Over the past few years, $10,000 worth was stolen. And so I got $70,000 left. I came in and got a fence permit. Our fence is 13 feet high. And it is all screwed, not a nail in it. And it's offset. So if the fence ever has to come down, it can come down so fast it's unreal. But to support it, I put angle iron on the back side of that fence into concrete. A tornado might take it. But this high windstorm that we had last week, I didn't have my angle iron up. I got up at 4 o'clock in the morning. I thought that thing was going to be gone at 13 feet high. And it was standing just as straight as I put it in. So I can pat myself on the back on that. And then we need to build a fence on the east side of that property to pacify some water conditions out there. And that fence will be owned by the owner adjoining. And this fence will be owned, that I have up, by the city of Menasha. But it is built, you can inspect it. Maintenance-wise, that fence should stand forever. It's the same material that if you go through Kimberly, as you go underneath the Highway 441, the 8x8s are the same there as they are here. And then they built the fence, I don't know who they did, on the way to Greenville on Highway 10 and 14 before you get to 76. There's big ponds there, and they put a big fence up. Well, I went and took a look at that fence, and it's falling all apart. It was a good thing I went. They nailed it for one thing, and the second thing, they had it on 9-foot wide spans, which I have, but it all warped. What we're doing with this fence on the backside, I'm taking 2 4x4s coming in 30 inches in on each side and screwing them all in to stop any twisting. And then with the steel, I don't think there's a fence in the state of Wisconsin built like that. So with that being said, if you have any questions, I'm standing up here.
It's a beautiful fence. I've driven
Thank you.
by it several times, and it really catches your eye.
Well, we needed to hide what was next door, or you could have never sold the lot. And there's wetland next door, and I told the DNR, you got trucks buried 2-3 feet in the wetland, and they didn't care, but they did fine me $350,000. So you add up everything else I have in here, I've got about $750,000 that's never going to come back. And I will assure this council, I never, ever did anything wrong. The DNR finds the property owner. They should be finding the engineers who missed a permit. I've been fined 4 times. All 4 times it's engineering. And I guess we don't need to go there. So at least I got that off my mind anyway. Can I answer any other questions?
We'll look for a motion first to open discussion, and this would be to forward the development agreement terms to the council. And then we can take questions for either Director Kyle or Mr. Higgins. Alderman Keehan?
Thank you. I'll make a motion to forward to the council the development agreement terms for Woodland Developments LLC.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any questions for either Director Kyle or Mr. Higgins? Well, Alderman Taylor.
Thank you. Director Kyle, you don't have to comment on this if you don't want at this time. I can talk to you. Have we violated agreements that the city of Menasha signed with the developer in the past, as he stated? And if you want to talk off.
Well, in the development agreement that we had with Mr. Higgins for Woodland Hills, we did have provision in there for the deferred assessment. However, the next piece that I think he's referring to, Woodland Hills Heights, that was developed at a point in time where the city was having its issues with the steam plant, and so we weren't able to borrow funds under that program at that time. But I don't believe we had any default on an agreement or anything like that. It was just we didn't have the ability to borrow at that time.
Okay. You're in favor of this agreement?
Well, I've been working with Mike for a few years now, trying to put this together, and I mean, there are challenges, and you know, as he indicated, there are substantial expenses, and the trail is, you know, that's another matter. There will be expense associated with that should we decide to proceed. But I think this gives us an opportunity. It creates an avenue to make our connections with the neighborhood, to create a loop. That area on the west side of the pond is over 4 acres, and ultimately the way that whole territory sits out there, there's a band of wetlands that extends all the way from this Woodland Hills Pond pretty much to Oneida Street. And a good part of that is already a city conservancy. In the past, we've had discussions with the city of Appleton. They have a 9-acre piece of wetland in there. So I think there's opportunities over the long term to grow our conservancy, and this would be likely through stewardship funds or that sort of thing. But as you look, you know, further into the future, there's going to be less and less green space for recreation. And I think if we can kind of piece this together and then make the connections with the trail network as opportunities arise, that it does create an asset for the community.
Is there any dollars, since this is part of the regional trail system, is there any other type of dollars available for acquiring this?
Well, I don't know for the land acquisition piece, but for the trail development piece, I think there would be. You know, we did, and we had that federal grant for the Province Terrace Trail. That source of funding is still out there. Depending on what timeline this operates under, there are some plans for upgrading Highway 10, which would then, you know, have the trails as kind of a required component. So I think there will be opportunities, and you know, we're not going to get this thing built, you know, in a year or two, but I think we will set the stage and start, you know, trying to pick away at this as we can and as the grant resources become available.
Mr. Higgins, I'd like to thank you for your investments in the city of Menasha. I know you were instrumental in getting this project, these properties out in that area going, and there's been other developers too out in that area, and certainly it's our growth area, and I think we'll have to have some sort of relationship in the future because of some other properties tying in with you, so hopefully we can.
The next street is totally designed the way the original Woodland Hills. They'll all be big homes, big lots, big taxes. And it's taken a long time for people to start looking at Menasha. Right now we have competition with the town of Harrison. There's quite a few farms coming available, and that's why I'm a little nervous why I want to get this going to get ahead of them. But I don't think anywhere in Calumet County is there going to be a subdivision with this caliber that's coming up on the next streets. The ravines that we're having 300 feet deep on courts, there isn't nothing. So if they're concerned about taxes, I get that all the time. And the only way for me to answer that, and the city of Menasha can't, how I answer that is, where do you live, where do you work? And one will say, well, I work, I moved to Greenfield because of taxes, but I work in Menasha. And I said, what do you spend on car and fuel every day? And that's how I sold one of my last lots. The guy did the numbers and said, oh, you're right. It's cheaper to move here than it is to go out of the area. And I think in time, this will come across. We got to get past some bad publicity from a certain newspaper.
Well, we know that it's comparing apples to oranges when it comes to our taxes. We provide different services, and you see all the fighting going on in the other cities with when you replace a street, how you get taxed for that, and we have that sharing ability in our communities.
I tell them all of that.
Thank you for your.
One more thing, if it was listed with a realtor, then no one hears that thing. That's part of Menasha's problem. These realtors aren't our favor here, so I get to talk to everybody or I don't sell a lot.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Alderman Langdon?
Mr. Higgins, you can stay up there.
Yep.
Thank you, Chairperson Nichols.
He's the only guy that knows me.
You can sit down if you'd like.
Well, I got to stretch
You
the
can sit
knee.
up there.
It's fine.
Yeah, yeah, I've been fortunate to have known you for almost 6 years now, and you've been nothing but very polite to us. Never come up here, raise your voice with the concerns that you've had in the past. Very appreciative of that. You mentioned, and I don't know, this is why I'm asking. I know Lexington, when they came in to our land out there, I forget his name, but he came in saying lower prices, and that's what's selling. You're a developer, and you just mentioned big houses, big lots. Are those still selling? Big?
Yes, they are. It's really crazy. Under 200 is selling, and then over 300 is selling. It's limbo between 2 and 3. And the point is, I have all these big lots and these big homes there now. And on the backside, which is choice land, to turn around and take lots and make them 80 feet wide when they're 300 feet deep, I would have to ask a pile of money for a real small lot, and I wouldn't get it. So I elected to bring the same theme straight through, go with the bigger lots. The only thing is, this time I'm going to farm them. I've been paying $1,400 a year tax for lots that are still sitting in that last piece I put in. Yep. And that adds up a lot of money. But my opinion, I could be totally wrong, there are people looking for the bigger homes. Where else are they going to go right now? The other urgency for this next phase that comes in is this year the DNR came out there in Woodland Hills and took another 3 acres of mine and called it wetland. And she made the appointment in April when the thaw was there and stood in one of the farm furrows, because I stood in the same furrow. She said, see the water over my boot? This is wetland. I just lost 3 more acres. So we got to get this stuff open. Otherwise, we're going to keep losing it.
Okay.
Thanks for the question.
Yes, you're welcome. Thank you. So with that, Director Stino, I think it was Greg mentioned that the money would come from the 2015 Street Construction Fund. Is this something that we can afford right now, especially what we're going to be talking about in our Board of Public Works?
I don't see Director Radke here, but he did confirm.
Oh, there he is.
Sorry.
Is this a question for Mark?
He did confirm that there are additional funds available in the 2015 budget that will not be spent on the 2015 streets. So I believe he did say yes, the funds were available.
So, okay, just let me, is that those funds, Mark, that would maybe, when I talked to you about a week and a half ago about Racine Street, would we be losing Racine Street then from these possible funds to help Mr. Higgins?
Well, no, the funds that I'm referring to are mostly coming from funds that were budgeted for Unit 2015-01, the Northeast Asphalt Project that we recommended a payment for tonight. The fact that those bids came in under what we budgeted, so that was for itemized capital projects.
All right, thank you.
I mean, we can still wait on Racine Street
Yep,
for
yep. Yeah.
a little bit later in the year to determine
Yep,
that.
I know we talked about that. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Benner?
Thank you, Chairman. The motion for this is just for the staff to work on the development agreement. And within that agreement, I have a lot of concerns about the trail going in. Because in my opinion, the trail should go in before any homes are built, so people know the trail's there. And 'cause I don't need to live through that experience again that I did a few years ago. And if it's not going to be able to go in, then we have to have strong language about disclosure to the people purchasing those lots that there will be a trail going in through that land, and that's the rationale for that land. Otherwise, I will not support this.
Could I answer that for you? Am I allowed to answer that question? Sure. The person that presently is going to be buying the property, that was the first requirement that I put in, and I'll put it right in the title policy. So when the person closes, they get a copy of the title policy, and it will say in the title policy that a walking trail will definitely be going through there. And when we type up the offer to purchase, it will be there. So not only, and I will sign an agreement to that. So not only will you have it at the offer to purchase, you will have it in the title policy. And then what can anybody say? It's in their title policy when they close. At the banker's supposed to read what the title policy is, and it's in there. I also went through the same grief. That's why this is gone. So I want the rest of it here. So it will be in the title policy for you. All right, thanks.
Thank you. Any other questions? I have a question for Director Stino. The land purchase of $110,000 right now is slated to come out of TID number 9. And the council just authorized some, I can't think of the word.
Refinancing.
Refinancing, thank you. So that TID number 9 would be able to handle the payments, the loan payments, the debt payments that it needs to service. And in your estimation, would TID number 9 be able to handle those new debt payments along with this land purchase?
If we are solely going by what the TID looks like right now, just by way of brief description, end of 2014, we had approximately $700,000 in the fund balance of TID 9. The annual increment is approximately $600,000. After those refinancings in 2017, we're looking at about $470,000 going towards the debt payment. There will likely be some other expenses, as there have been in the TIF all along, but everything appears to be that there would be enough available for the $110,000 land purchase, and if that $300,000 for the trail is in the correct range, that would be available.
Thank you. Seeing no other questions or discussion at this time, we have a motion and a second to forward this to the council. We'll take a roll call vote.
Motion carried on roll call 6-0.
Thank you for being here tonight, Mr. Higgins, and good luck.
Thank you. We'll get it all on the roll by January 10th, right, Craig?
And the last item of business this evening is number 1, the police canine vehicle and equipment laws. Attorney Captain asked for this to be on the agenda to provide an update on what's been happening. Attorney Captain.
Thank you. I did want to show you that what the city received from CIVMIC in regards to the damage to the police vehicle that had the fire, which was a total loss. On the back of the letter dated June 30th from CIVMIC shows you the analysis that was done by the adjuster as to how they arrived at that settlement amount. In addition, you will notice that there was a $1,000 deductible. I also did go out and did a short analysis myself of Blue Book value of the vehicle outright, and it came in actually at a lower dollar figure than the final settlement amount that was offered. And so I thought it appropriate then to take the dollar figure that they had offered for the loss to the vehicle. What else was I going to tell you? The equipment, I did file a claim with the local government property insurance fund, and if anyone recollects the last time that we had to go through that entity, it did take a while. I received notice that they received the claim, but it has not been assigned to anyone yet, so I don't know what it is, if anything, that we will be receiving in that regard. And there is also a deductible as well, so either way, what that a dollar amount goes to is towards our cumulative deductible in case there are any further losses for the year. So we report that to local government property insurance fund. And that's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Attorney Caplan? Seeing none, we'll have a motion to adjourn.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? We are adjourned.